Hi, Scott. It's good to see you again. I think we last saw each other at Old Trafford, didn't we, just before Christmas. Thank you so much to everyone for logging on this evening. My name's Shirley. I live and work in Greater Manchester, and I run a whole series of special schools for children and young adults aged 4 to 31, including adult daycare provision. And it was when I was beginning in this journey of working in the specialist sector that I began to realise, by reading lots of experiences of younger girls who are autistic, thinking, oh, that looks familiar. Well, that's just being young, isn't it? And that's just completely normal for being young. And then I had that whole penny drop moment. And then I received the diagnosis of autism just at the start of the pandemic, 2 days before my dad died on a COVID ward. So I had an awful lot to process, because when do you tell your surviving parent that their youngest child is autistic when they don't live near you and your dad's just died of COVID and the world's already been blown apart? So I think it's fair to say I've been on a big journey, and a big journey around self-compassion. I've actually very recently, and it's a bit controversial, I suppose, I've stopped saying the phrase late diagnosis, because I think it miscommunicates it to people who are neurodivergent and who haven't had most of their lives. And how I articulate it is having my needs unmet. So if I reframe it, instead of saying I've had a late diagnosis, so people think everyone's getting diagnosed these days. And I say, for decades, my needs weren't met. It kind of creates a pause point, and it creates more, I think, of that opportunity for a discussion. And some of the things that, I was only in Disneyland last week with some of my students, and I become dysregulated in places like Disneyland, but that had been risk assessed for work. And I was able to demonstrate how I was able to self-regulate and put a care plan for myself in place in those moments. And I like to think that, as well as going around and saying, I'm one of the exec directors of this, you can be anything you want in your life when you leave school. I also like to give honest representation, because, as Scott knows, I always say there's no master here anymore. I'm out loud and proud these days. I'm really not down for the ride of shame. I've spent far too long in what I would call the shame cage. And I almost would say my lived experience of being a younger girl and a younger woman isn't that I was necessarily masking. I'd learned to form as a trauma response, which is very different. And I thought it was very interesting that the Christine McGuinness entry on TV last week certainly covered some of those aspects as well of what I understood from what Christine was communicating. So I'm really open and honest about my journey. And I'm not going to sit here and I'll give you chapter and verse, because I could talk about anything forever. And I'm really happy to take any questions, and also just have a really rich, open and honest discussion, because there are always safe spaces to do this. I know this. I've been trolled online just for saying I'm autistic. I'm really proud of my autistic students, and I hope they do well this academic year. I had a welfare rights officer tell me to stop normalising autism and that not everyone would work. So I reported it as hate speech. I reported it to the employer and dealt with it in the most appropriate ways. And then, because it kind of ate me up that someone had said I was normalising autism, I went out and got a T-shirt and put it on. And when I do Inset Day teaching in my schools now, I kind of say, people try and throw shame at me for my autistic identity these days, I'll turn that into a pride slogan T-shirt like that online and wear it in your face, because I'm done. And I'm done with it on behalf of really quite vulnerable students that I work with. So if that's all right, Scott, that's kind of like my opening gambit.
Excellent. Thanks, Shirley.